Welcome to the Cure for Stupidity Podcast, an ongoing exploration of the stupidity in real life, relationships, parenting, and more. Hello, welcome to our second podcast.
Two. Oh, we forgot to talk about two.
Yeah, we did.
So why don't you start?
Well, my uncles were my role models growing up. We always went to my uncles' football games and just all of their stuff. And all my uncles wore number 22. So when I grew up and I started playing sports, I chose number 22 as my number. I rarely actually got that jersey. Apparently, it's a very popular number. So I didn't actually wear it that often, but it was always my number. Like, it was always what I considered to be lucky, or, you know, like a little sign here and there for when I would find the number 22 that it meant something. It was cool. It was special.
Yeah, and when I played football in high school, I also wore 22. So when Jamie and I started dating, I was the guy who had his football jersey from high school pinned up in his bedroom. So when she came over, she's like, 22, that was my number. And this was like one of like 1,000 things that we had in common as we were dating, that we discovered as we were dating. And so 22 has kind of become our thing. And the number 2 is really special because, you know, we're geeks. And
there's two twos.
There's two twos, basically. Yeah. And so then it became a thing of, well, like someone said, I love you first. And then every time after that has been, I love you too. And so we kind of abbreviated just saying 2. And so 2 is a very special number for us. So episode 2.
We made it.
So today's episode, we're going to talk about the second principle number 2, which is perception is more important than reality, or perception versus reality. And this principle is really, really interesting. It's another one of those foundational principles because a lot of people don't understand it. A lot of people believe that perception equals reality, which isn't true, which really, really isn't true. And it can cause some pretty considerable problems with communication, relationships, but even like walking up the stairs. Like, I mean, if you ever had this situation where you're like carrying a box of things, like, but you can't see the stairs, you just know that there's stairs there. And so you take that last step that isn't there, you perceive it's there, but it changes your behavior. You behave as if it's there. And so the whole idea, and I mean, reality didn't change. Like, there's not an extra step because you perceived it. But that's the thing with perception and reality. It's like perception guides our behavior, so perception's more important. And so as we talk about relationships and communication, it's very clear how that can come up sometimes.
Yeah, and I think we did get a really awesome topic to talk about from Gary. So thanks, Gary. I think he submitted it on LinkedIn to you.
Yeah, he said, can you talk about common sense and how that can get into trouble with communication, relationships, and absolutely. There's a concept in this section of perception of reality called "How could you possibly?" Now, "How could you possibly" is a phrase, and very, very many kind of derivations of that phrase. Is that a word? Derivations? Derivatives? Derivatives.
There we go.
Derivation sounds so much better, though.
I don't know. This is like Eric language?
Ericism. That's an Ericism.
Ericism?
So we'll put that in the...
There's more in the book later.
So many derivatives of that phrase. How could you possibly? And basically, it's a thing that we ask, like a question, but really it's a judgment. So it's not like, how could you possibly? It's more like, what are you doing? Like, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
And that's actually the foundation of the book, is that phrase, how could you possibly? Or people say, I don't understand why you would, or I don't understand why anyone would, or I don't understand how you could, or, you know, I can't understand why you'd see it that way, or how could you possibly do that?
Which are all really nice ways, because I don't think actually most people talk like that. It's more like, what the... That's generally, I think, what we're actually referring to here.
Yeah, because it's a judgment, right?
Yeah.
And so when we talk about common sense or issues with common sense, like a lot of times people will think of it as there's something wrong with you. You lack common sense. You're an idiot. But more often than not, that's not the case.
Yeah.
It's not the case. And so I was thinking about this and how it affects us. And the number one way that I believe that I get that from Jamie is when she says, how could you possibly, is when it has to do with like tidying up. I'm not great at, and I'm gonna acknowledge it. I'll acknowledge it. I'm not great at tidying up as I go.
Not great at?
I'm not great. That is a true statement.
Very true.
I'm not great at it.
Said differently.
I'm not good at it. Especially like if I'm cooking. So when I cook, I'm an experimental cooker, and I like to do a lot of things like make sure everything's done at the same time, which means that there's like 4 or 5 pans, 2 cutting boards, 3 knives. I don't know why I need more knives and cutting boards.
Double everything.
Yeah, I mean, but it always ends up delicious and hot at the same time. It does.
So true.
And what the way Jamie cooks is she likes to like cook and clean as she goes, and I don't have the brain space for that. Like if I'm trying to manage like 3 omelets, or I'm trying to manage like a whole pot full of things need ready to go in the pot at the same time. I don't have the capacity to do that, and so I tend to make a mess as I cook. It's like, as we're eating the food, it's inevitable that everyone's like, "This is fantastic, wonderful," and Jamie loves it, right? This is wonderful.
Best cook in the house by far. Like, we're all better for it when you cook. To be clear, like everybody enjoys it better until the meal is done, and then we look at the kitchen and the bomb that went off.
I think it's. Only one person really is minded.
Only one person actually cares about the kitchen.
Yeah.
Got it.
But then the I think what happens is, you say, because you've made requests of me to clean up as I go so many times, and it's so outside of my natural that I continue to mess it up, and so the tone that I hear from you is, how could you possibly?
Yeah, like I will reuse things, or like rinse something off and use it again. So yeah, I definitely walk into the kitchen. I look at 3 cutting boards, and it's like, why was there 3 cutting boards used for this meal? Like, and I look at the meal and I look back, and yeah, like it's totally like, how could you possibly think? Because like for me, when I pull out a dish, it's like, I'm gonna have to wash this. So it's like, what's the easiest utensil to clean? And like, what's the easiest, to fit into the dishwasher? What do I not have to hand wash? That's a huge, like, determining factor in what I use. Like, oh, am I gonna have to wash this by hand, or can I throw it in the dishwasher? And there are no concerns for any of those matters in your amazing creative brain as you cook. But for me, the aftermath is painful to be like, really? Like, and it seems inconsiderate. It seems like, all right, well, I cook, you clean, good luck, and so that's hard. Yeah,
it's funny because I think all of that extra consideration that you do, I don't do.
Yeah.
And talking about common sense, it's like, to you, that's very clearly common sense. Like, it's natural for you. Like, that thought process is natural. For me, not at all. Like, I mean, I do think about probably hand washing versus dishwasher washing, and I probably tend to do more hand washing stuff because that's where I help most out with the dishes. Is when I help out with hand wash.
Yeah.
Or certain situations where I can like hand wash 2 or 3 of the pans that I use, but then have them put away before.
But it's usually just because there's no burners left for you to use on this stove, so you're like, I gotta wash something. Dang it!
No, maybe sometimes, but I'm thinking, I think. In my mind, when I do that, like if I do like wash a couple of the pots and have them put away, like I'm like very proud at that point. Like I'm like, I did it. I helped. I moved the ball forward, and then you come in and you're like, oh,
that was the minimum.
No, you don't even see it sometimes. Like you don't even notice that was done because like there's like eggs spilled on the burner, or there's like 2 cutting boards or 3 cutting boards left out, and like. In my mind,
it's shocking how much you use cutting boards. I gotta say, like you use a cutting board for everything.
I love a cutting board.
You make a sandwich and get a cutting board.
Oh yeah, because it's a clean surface.
Oh yeah,
it's a clean surface.
So is your plate that you're about to eat on.
No, but it's curved at the edges.
I think the solution is you do all the dishes.
Okay. I could do that. That means that you're gonna have to accept the way that I do the dishes.
Does that mean like daily?
That means like
when you have time.
Every time I do the dishes, you're gonna have to accept how I do it. I see you trying to skip right over that.
Got it.
But how I load the dishwasher is gonna be.
Well, if I don't have to unload it, I don't care how you load it.
You don't know that. Jerem does that anyway. Our oldest son, he's graduated to chores of actually helping us, so now he's the unloader of the dishwasher.
Yeah, we're beyond like the basic, clean up after yourself. Like there has to be something now to add to the family, his own responsibility.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so kind of leveraging those two things of perception and common sense. What is your perception of me? Like when you walk into the kitchen and you see the whole mess, like what is your perception of the space? What is your perception of me?
I think it shows your disorganization. You're very disorganized in general. Yeah. And so I just see that as a manifestation of it. And it's hard because then from there I go to the socks that are on the floor or the, dirty clothes right next to the hamper.
Not in the kitchen. There's not socks in the kitchen. I mean, the story you're painting.
I'm pretty sure at least once you've left socks in our kitchen.
Yeah, so have you once. But the picture you're painting, like, the kitchen's a mess and there's socks on the floor. There are not socks in the kitchen, just to be clear.
Okay, but under the desk, there might be some dirty socks.
Well, there might those are actually clean socks. Those are clean socks.
You didn't use those yet?
For like 2 minutes as I was doing a construction project.
Clearly. Okay, got it. Construction project, 2 minutes, they're done.
Yeah. No. Those are clean socks.
Oh my God.
Move on.
So my brain thinks where I go to is you're disorganized. And also I know that I'm the planner. And I feel like it's just another manifestation of that, of like, I know that if I can clean now and load the dishwasher now and do these things now, then when dinner's over, like we get to our chill time faster. Like we get to us. It's like the kids go to bed and then it's not like go and straighten up and do all that then. Or save it until the next morning when, you're at work and everyone else is, doing their stuff. So for me, it's like, I'm just thinking 2 steps ahead. And I feel like a lot of our arguments where I'm frustrated at you come from a failure to plan or being disorganized. And it's hard, like, cause it's so innate for me. Yeah. It's so natural.
Yeah.
It's not something I have to go out of my way to do. Like that's already going on in my processes. So for it to be so outside of your natural state, it's hard to come to terms with that and be like, really?
To accept me as I am.
Yeah. And to not perceive it as something way deeper or more hurtful than you're just disorganized.
Yeah.
Like it's easy to go from disorganized to lazy. It's very easy to be like, okay, well, did you just not want to do it? Like, did you just leave it for me to do? Yeah. And that's hard. Like, it's hard to not hold a grudge, I guess, but like kind of just have that wear and tear happen all the time and have it not eventually bubble up into something more than, oh, there it is again, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I think, when you talk about it like that, just the difference between our natural personalities, and you are a planner, like you plan and you plan a lot, and I
over plan.
Yes,
I got a backup plan to the plan.
And I think that's the thing that I admire most about you, is that you can plan and be 2 steps ahead all the time and thinking about how this could impact that and this can impact that. And it's funny because when it comes to cooking, I feel like that's how I cook. It's like I cook with a plan, and I am thinking 2 steps ahead in that task. But when it comes to like the cleaning portion of it, like I don't do that. I naturally don't do that.
And I will say that when you cook, you time everything to be done perfectly timed. So like everything is hot and fresh and ready to go. And like when I cook, like I don't care if the rice sits for 10 minutes before everything else is done. Like if that 10 minutes is spent with me doing other things, or like, to start the rice early and put it on a timer, as opposed to sitting and doing that while I'm doing all the rest of the cooking. So that is something where we differ. Like to me, the bigger picture of things takes precedence to having a perfectly timed, perfectly cooked meal. Not to say that my meals aren't good, but I do believe that you are by far the better cook in the house, like 100% hands down.
Thank you.
But I don't necessarily appreciate what it takes to get to that point. Like, and then sometimes, and I think I've actually said this to you, it's been a while, but like the level of difference in some of the meals that I cook and some of the meals that you cook, it's not like the outcome isn't that exponentially different, but the process was so painful that it was like, I should have just done it myself. Like my food is good enough and I wouldn't have had all of this extra to deal with.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we did talk about a while ago about doing like kind of co-cooking.
Oh yeah.
So like
that never happened.
I know. And so instead of trying to kind of change my natural style, we said, you know, I can work to get better at this. I can work to get better at this. But if we kind of co-cooked, then like if you see something that could be cleaned right now, you could do that while I'm trying to do this other thing, and we can kind of do this as a partnership. And it hasn't ever happened. Yeah. I think it would be a cool idea to try.
It's like hard though. You got, what's the saying? Like too many cooks in the kitchen, right?
Yeah,
like,
but I mean, if we're like you
like, I'm stepping on your toes, you're stepping on mine.
You'd be the sous chef.
All right.
You could be a good sous chef when I'm cooking, and I could be a good sous chef when you're cooking.
Okay. You're a great sous chef for me. Like, you take directions from me way better than I take them from you. I'm like, well, what could you do this? Like, oh, well, did you think about that? And like sometimes also with your cooking, I am a horrific picky eater that if I don't know what you're putting in it, then I'm cool.
Right.
But once I see you putting things in my food, I'm like, are you sure you want to do that? I don't think I want to. I don't think I like that.
That's true. Well, it's funny, you know, kind of talking about perception, and when you do that, not kind of are picky, but I'm talking about when you know are critiquing the cleanliness of the kitchen or whatever. Like my perception is that you're oversensitive to this issue. Like when you talk about like in the bigger picture, I think the meal is the biggest picture of all of this. Everything else is peripheral.
And to me, I have to have 3 meals every day at home. Yeah. Like no, like right now we're not going anywhere. We're not, you know, barely eating out. Like, well, takeout,
or, yeah.
which still means dishes, by the way. But you know, for me, like, yeah, meal planning and getting the groceries and like all of the extra that goes into it. Those things are like just checking boxes. Like, did everyone get a healthy meal? Did everyone get something that they liked? Was everybody, you know, nourished appropriately in all the different food groups and, you know, all those other things that I consider and I think of? That's where my brain goes to. And I can't see how the meal being perfected, you know, on my scale of stuff that I'm juggling, a perfect meal isn't at the top of my list.
Yeah. Yeah, so do you walk in and it was accurate and you say, that's when you say, how could you possibly? Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's...
Because, like, how could you possibly make that big of a mess? Like, we're only eating spaghetti. Like, that should be 1 pot for noodles and a saucepan for the sauce. Done. Like, in my brain. And, you know, ladle or spoon. And you're like, no, like, I wanted to add meat. Yeah, I just cut the meat and saute it, and then you gotta have a cutting board. I mean, it's not a cutting board. It is not a meal from Eric if it doesn't have a cutting board.
If you're gonna put mushrooms in the spaghetti sauce, you need to have a cutting board.
Wait, you put mushrooms in my spaghetti sauce?
No, I don't. Not in yours. Okay. Not in yours. Oh, in the kids, I do.
Yeah, that would be rude. Mushrooms are gross.
They're actually delicious.
I know, you love them.
I love them. Go ahead.
My perception is when I walk in the room, it was, oh my gosh, like he is so scatterbrained, chaotic. Like there's like this started over here, there's this there. And I will say, actually, like not to be like try to take away from anything that you do, but the number of meals that go awry, I think are more on your watch. And it's more in the sense of you try to perfect it so well that you've got so much going on at once that it's easy to overlook something or do something.
Sure. Yeah.
And so that's another, I feel like, how could you possibly moment where like when something gets burnt or like when the barbecue gets left on and we run through an entire propane tank, you know, all those little things like that. What'd you say once?
No, I said guilty.
Oh, I was going to say, because guilty. Yeah. How many tanks we've wasted, but
is that important right now? Continue your statement.
It is not, sorry. But like those are also moments where it's like, how could you possibly like burn that? Like that was the simplest part, or like the main part of the meal. And so I think that that's definitely like my judgment comes in of like, yuck. I don't like that. I don't like feeling it either. And like that's the other thing is like then I try to hold it in, right? And it's like yum, dinner is so good, and I'm staring at the kitchen like, really?
It's dirty and awful?
No, not like the food isn't actually good. Like, it's hard to enjoy the meal when I'm looking at the aftermath that it took to make it, and I'm like, it probably would have been better to just like drive through in and
so
out.
Interesting. So two things I want to say. One, it's interesting because the way that I grew up was the cook. There's the cook and the cleaner, and whoever cooks doesn't clean. And that's just that was just kind of the natural family dynamic of my household when I grew up. The second thing I wanted to say is I think the reason that when things go awry, when meals go bad, it's usually on my watch as the head chef, because I experiment a lot.
Yeah.
And I'll try things, and sometimes they turn out amazing, like the pulled pork barbecue pulled pork rice stir fry.
Yeah, that was good.
Holy smokes, that was good. But anyway, like they're just when I like to try things, I like to experiment, and that actually leads to one of the other how could you possiblys that I hear from you often, is you say, is this change for change's sake?
Oh, that's one.
Which is funny because the way my brain works, it's very experimental. Like it's let's try this, let's try that. I mean, even the way that this room is set up right now, right, is I noticed things in the first episode. It's like, oh, we really should adjust this. We should adjust this. But I didn't really have a plan for it. I just knew that those things had to adjust. And so right before we set up this podcast,
I walk in the room and it's like, and everything's different this week.
And then like, even as you're sitting there, like I'm still adjusting to make it right. And I don't think it's right yet. We'll see in post production, but it's better, right? I feel it's better, and I think like the way that my brain works is if I see something and I want it to be better, I will adjust things to make it better.
Yeah, change for change's sake is absolutely one of my pet peeves, and I feel like the kids are picking up on it too. And they're like, yeah, let's just go and change everything. I'm like somebody who really likes structure and routine. And so for me, it's so hard to like walk into a room and everything is completely different. And it's like, I didn't notice all the things you noticed. So for me, like, yay, week 1, we did it. We had this awesome podcast. And then week 2, it's totally different in here. So it's fine. And like, I don't have to manage it or, handle any of the production things. That's on you. So it doesn't actually affect me, but it is a little chaotic, and I don't like chaos. Like I like to plan and know and plan and know. And so like the same for recipes and meals. It's like, I really like this certain meal that you cook. And then the next time it's totally different because you put in
slightly different.
Slight for you is huge for somebody that's picky. And I am picky.
That's true.
So, yeah. So I think just that is definitely a how could you possibly, like when you change things that weren't needing change, that's really hard.
I think that's when you talk about perception, right? Is so because I see things differently than you do, it like my perception is this needs to be changed. Like the audio quality on the last couple episodes were like with the teaser and whatever needed to be fixed because the room we're in is very echoey, and it's like I have to try to pull out the echo with software. It's like it changed the voices and everything, and so like you don't perceive that. Like that's not something that ever would need to be adjusted. But to me, it's like it stands out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
And so, right, we're talking about like how perception then leads to the how could you possibly. If I perceive something here, you don't perceive something, and then I act on this thing that you can't see. It's like
I'm adding a whole bunch of story to why you did it.
Yeah, and in that phrase, it's just change for the sake of change. And like, for me, no, it's change for the sake of making this thing better, solving this problem. And I think that a lot of my experimentations are in that vein of I see a problem and I want to adjust it. I want to fix it. And you said, the kids are picking up on, I think the kids are naturally that, or not all of them. Yeah. Right. But I think, Jasmine for sure, our youngest, and Jerem as well. Yeah. Like they're problem finder, or problem makers, but problem finders. Yeah. And then they seek to solve those problems.
They want to solve problems that they've never encountered, but they perceive might at some point be a problem. So therefore, I'm going to make sure that this is never a problem.
Never a problem. Solve that problem.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Or it's amazing.
It is, but also it's so hard sometimes. Again, like for them, the mess, the aftermath that comes from something that wasn't even broken to begin with is so difficult for me, where it's like the gardening, It's like they really, really want to garden, which I totally get that gardening is, messy and fun and digging in dirt. But like the evolution of the garden from planting things in the ground to then like this raised garden thing to then like building structures for like, I don't know how long it would take, probably a year for the plants to even get this big. They'd already built structures to withhold and protect plants that hadn't even sprouted yet. Like the stuff that they were solving for was so far out of anything that they had yet to experience or would even probably likely experience. But yet they'd already like built structures and done like exponentially like more mess and work.
I'm hearing a lot of how could you possibly in your tone.
Yeah, a little bit, gotta say. Yeah, it's hard though. And like I think honestly a lot of it for me just revolves around like mess and order.
Yeah.
Like or chaos and order and stuff like that. And like it's hard when I really try to provide stability for the kids, for our house. And granted, we are living in absolute chaos during a remodel right now. Right. But even within those like rooms that we're living in, like trying to keep them as stable and consistent and, routine and structure and, kind of having the constants in their life that they can rely on and count on and know that no matter what, like these are the expectations. And also, good modeling for them of, making your bed every single morning. Like, I don't care if somebody's coming over. I don't care if it's not that messy, just good habit forming and building. And so, yeah, like some of the stuff that they can do and then live in for week 2. And like, it doesn't bother them. And like, that's something that we've, tried to test of like, how long will it take for them to notice? And like, either they notice and don't care, or they don't even notice a lot of the stuff. Right. And it's like in our perception, it's like, they don't want to deal it, and I do think that right now the thing that I keep coming back to is kind of this lazy is kind of the judgment that comes with a lot of those how could you possibly is and it's a yucky feeling. Like I don't like feeling or thinking that about my family members. So like I get a yuck factor about thinking it, but then like it persists and it is still there. And like, I'm trying to figure out a different story to tell about the thing. But like the story that I keep coming back to is like everybody leaves it for me and I'm not Cinderella. Like that's not my name. That's not my job. That's not my role in the family. Yeah. So I don't want to feel like I'm the only one that notices these things and then it becomes my responsibility to fix them.
Yeah. But what if you are the only one to notice?
I know.
I'm not saying that you have to be the one to fix it, but if you are the only one to notice, like, when we talk about perception, if you're the only one that can see it, like outside of like, building, we think about the, in the book we talk about the Himba tribe. Right. And so like the Himba tribe, they don't have a word for blue. So they literally can't see blue. Like they can't discern blue from green. And it's like.
So I'm living with the tribe of Himbas who can't see the mess that they make.
Essentially.
Okay.
Right. And so.
So then what?
So my question is like, would you get mad at a Himba for not seeing blue? No. Right. And so how then do you either just deal with it, cope with it, or do you slowly train them on how to see blue?
I think I'm on the slowly train them path.
Yeah.
I just don't think I was prepared for how slow the train is moving. I'm not known for my patience in life.
What?
I know. Shocking. I know. I am not the most
Good thing you're not a doctor
patient-
because you have no patience.
Oh my God. Oh, that was ridiculous.
I
You
love you
totally
trying
caught me off
I
guard.
love you trying to roll your eyes, but you love the
It was
joke.
really good. You caught me off guard. I was like, what? Anyways, I am not known for my patience. It's a virtue that I am working on. And so that's something that I again, like in my head, I have all these people that surround me regularly right now, 24/7 for months on end. And I want them to see and get on board and, you know, make some steps forward or headway towards this new way of living potentially.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to not see that change coming.
Yeah.
And also to persist in this, you know, way of, you know, bringing the family aboard, being able to see blue when nobody's seeing blue. Like, I've got a really slow bunch of learners is what it feels like. And so then like my patience gets tested further and that's
Or has the opportunity to grow more.
Oh yeah. True. But like if I'm growing this much, like I want to see more growth, and I think that I'm outnumbered also.
yeah.
And that's hard.
Yeah. I think, you know, one thing that's important when you're trying to help us see blue is I think the biggest first step is having us realize that we can't see blue, right? So recognizing that there's something that we're not seeing is a big first step. And I think that
So family meeting.
No. What I'm saying is that I think that like even just in this conversation, like I'm aware that I don't see the mess as I'm making it, right? So we've already taken that step over 13 years of marriage.
Well,
and another 3 years of
I was
dating.
gonna say.
No, but like so the steps are there, right? So we're on process. I think yes, you need to continue to work on your patience, right? But also don't give up, right? Don't give up on us, because I'm very confident that while my natural tendency isn't to clean as I go, I can see the value in it. And I think that, I don't know if you see the differences in behavior from like now from let's say 5 years ago, but like I am, but I am doing more, you know, cleaning as I go. Like you don't see eggshells out when I'm done cooking eggs, right? Because like that's something like, oh, that I put those away as I go, right? I stack them on the cutting board and then take the cutting board, right? It's a nice little platter and right in the trash. It's perfect.
Love it.
The cutting boards are fantastic.
Oh.
It's like a movable counter.
Never knew how valuable
Oh, you have
cutting
no
boards
idea. No idea. Anyway, but kind of be aware of those transitions as they happen, and you know, maybe change your perceptions on how much things have progressed, because I see them and I'm proud of them. Like I'm proud of the little bits. I know it's not perfect yet, but I think that there's definitely some there has been some movement, glacial speed movement, but movement nonetheless.
I agree. I can give you the credit for those minor improvements that have been made.
I'll take anything I get. No, so actually, we want to transition a little bit because we've had a lot of questions around race and racism in the last several months, especially in the last couple of weeks, and I think, you know, talking about perception and reality has been, I think it's going to be a really important part of that. And so you've been doing a lot of reading. Obviously, you're a white woman who's married to a black man, and